And, I'm very lucky and fortunate that since I came out with my story, and, pushing the book and marketing the book and doing the podcasting and, opening up my own swag store, I've now found a national organization that's really aligned, a national foundation that's aligned with ending child abuse and neglect. And the organization is END, CAN, CAN. So ending child abuse and neglect. And to find something that's so aligned with the mission that I'm on, it was fantastic. So this national organization foundation is on a mission. They do walks. We are in 5 different states. So I am bringing the walk to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on September 17th of 2022 at Lake Vista Park in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee County. I live in Milwaukee, but born and raised in Racine. So it's very close to where, Racine, Milwaukee, Kenosha, anybody can come out. But yeah, to have a national organization to align my personal mission of my unspoken conversation with Candace podcast, it's amazing. So I really believe the stars align when you're on your purpose. And this is truly my purpose. By day, I'm a healthcare IT professional, but by night, I do my author work and my podcasting, and I do motivational speaking, and I'm also a life coach. So I like to say I'm the Jill of all trades instead of the Jack of all trades.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the podcast. I have somebody who's remotely podcasting today, can do all the things. Like, come on, can podcast from the front of your car. This is great. Like, you're not doing like an Uber thing right now, right?
No Uber. I am in my mom's vehicle, utilizing her car because she has air conditioning. I've been working remote so much that I don't travel, so my air conditioning doesn't work. And I thought, well, why get it fixed? I'm not going anywhere. And then my mom's so kind to let me use her car. So
nice.
I'm sitting in a vehicle transition.
Everyone, Candace Sanchez is here with me. Candace is a podcaster. I love me some podcasters, and she's an author. She does a lot of things. And if you need a ride, she's ready to drive you around Milwaukee anywhere you want to go. So, Candace does it all. Candace, welcome to the podcast. Nice to have you here.
Thank you, David, for having me on your show today. I really, truly appreciate it. From one podcaster to another, I know how important it is to, get people on your show and spread the message of how we can do the work together, right? So thank you for having me today.
And to get the right people on the podcast, right?
Absolutely. The right fit, the right message.
And that is exactly what you're bringing today. And I appreciate that. So let's talk a little bit, Candace, about your podcast. I'd love to kind of share a little bit about that. We're going to put a commercial bumper into the podcast as well, so people can get more information, but let people know about your podcast. I'd love to promote that right off the bat.
Right. So my podcast is Unspoken Conversations with Candace, yours truly. My podcast was really a spin off of the book that I wrote. So My book is titled Unspoken. You can purchase that on my website at www.candacesanchez.com. And my book, Unspoken, the title is a one-word title because I wasn't supposed to tell. I am a survivor of child abuse, molestation, taboo topic. It's very uncomfortable. And so writing the book, it took me 3 years to come out with my truth. I was in therapy for many years, and I truly healed from the inside out and published my book in 2020. During the 3 years of writing my book, because as you can imagine, reliving the trauma over and over again about what I experienced as a child, I was really kind of taking the Band-Aid off over and over again. And that was really hard. I found myself going into, different bouts of depression and having some issues mentally, really kind of like, is this really what I went through? Is this the truth? Is this what happened? And, because I have those memories. And then the podcast was formed because I felt I needed another area to not only having the book, right? That's one area of impact where you can impact someone's life, but the podcast was really a way to have a safe place for anybody that has trauma or, abuse or experienced life experiences, right? In general, life, dealing with cancer, dealing with death, dealing with suicide thoughts, dealing with those topics that are very uncomfortable to talk about. And I just really want to be a change agent in that space. I think you have to have those hard conversations. because I never reported. The statistics show 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 6 boys will experience sexual assault, sexual abuse by the time they're 18.
Say those numbers again,
And
please.
so,
say those numbers
yeah,
again.
1 in 4 for girls and 1 in 6 for boys by the time before they're even 18. So, and that's for those who report. So I really, want to stress that I never reported. My 2 abusers are walking around scot-free. I have my own reasons as to why I did not report. But I feel like now my book is my true testimony of the report, of what it transpired, to raise awareness to others. And really, my book is really it talks about those things and it always happens with family or friends or someone that's doing this to children. And that's people that are in position of power do this to children. Mm. So it's just more of raising the awareness. And I never really knew of resources, or I never felt safe to tell anyone. And so I didn't really speak my truth until, again, the book was published. And I was 47 years old when I started writing, and my book published right before I turned 50. So It's only, the book is still in its infancy stage. I'm really trying to push the book to get out there. So again, appreciate you having me on your podcast to do that. But then also the podcast is just another way to tell other people's stories, because it is very common. And so hopefully your listeners will tune in and check it out. So again, Thank you for letting me plug that.
Yeah, please, everyone, go and take a listen. Candace is doing great. I've been listening today. Candace, great stuff. Is there a podcast episode maybe somewhere that people can start? Like maybe there's maybe something recent, or a guest that came on that was just like, if you're going to listen to my podcast, go here first. Something come to mind at all?
I have to say they're all interesting, only because there's ones that are really like trigger alert, right? So those that have experienced trauma, sometimes it's hard for people who have experienced the trauma that I've experienced, other survivors, to listen, because it's so relatable and it hurts, because either they haven't told, or they want to tell, or they're still fearful to tell. So there's trigger warnings all over, right, in my podcast. But I think the one that really hit me hard was, so I thought I was pregnant by my abuser at the age of 15. It was my stepfather. So that was a really traumatic experience. And I wanted to commit suicide because I was not going to give birth to this child, and I wanted to kill myself.
Wow.
And just saying those words is scary, right?
Yeah.
But if you think about what the pandemic even did to a lot of people, it brought a lot of darkness to light, right? In mainstream, on social media, how much you saw of things that were going on in the world. You're like, is this really the world that we live in? And so for me, just being able to shine a light on people's darknesses and having the ability to inspire, encourage, and uplift others to not be fearful. And when you do truly allow, like, you release that type of trauma, and suicide was one of the things that I still kind of scurry around the topic. So my podcast, there was an episode of a young gentleman, Luis Vasquez, who talked about him conditioning himself to put a gun in his mouth because he wanted to kill himself at a very young age, because he had experienced life, bullying, being overweight, people making fun of him, just going through basic day-to-day things that kids go through. And thank God he didn't. He told his story on my podcast, but I realized that when I listened to that podcast, it was hard for me to say the word suicide. It was hard for me because it was a trigger for me as a podcaster, listening intently to that person sharing their most vulnerable story. And so that was a really good episode in my mind. And I had to listen to that episode like 4 or 5 times before I could promote it. So,
really?
So like I said, the work that we do is hard work. Podcasting is a lot of grind, right? Getting the right guests, getting the right message so that you can be relatable, so that your listeners feel like they have a safe place to listen. And if they can get any type of nugget, that's the beauty of podcasting. So kudos to all the podcasters out there that are doing the hard work like us, for sure.
Yeah. And for those that are not fearful of going after these unspoken topics and having people on to share their message, I think it just helps us to understand the human condition even more, right, and to see where we can all fit in as supports, as people maybe who have not experienced some of these things, but maybe it
Right.
has touched us in some way,
Right.
that having that conversation and hearing that might be the one
Mm-hmm.
spark to help somebody. And that's the one thing I love about podcasting as well, is you don't know who's going to hear this. You don't know who's going
Mm-hmm.
to read this
Mm-hmm.
book, right? We
Right.
don't know. We just do not know. And we
Right.
create this and put it out in the world. And our hope is that the right people will find it.
Correct. Agreed. 100%. And, I'm very lucky and fortunate that since I came out with my story, and, pushing the book and marketing the book and doing the podcasting and, opening up my own swag store, I've now found a national organization that's really aligned, a national foundation that's aligned with ending child abuse and neglect. And the organization is END, CAN. So ending child abuse and neglect. And to find something that's so aligned with the mission that I'm on, it was fantastic. So this national organization foundation is on a mission. They do walks. We are in 5 different states. So I am bringing the walk to Milwaukee, Wisconsin on September 17th of 2022 at Lake Vista Park in Oak Creek, Wisconsin, which is a suburb of Milwaukee County. I live in Milwaukee, but born and raised in Racine. So it's very close to where, Racine, Milwaukee, Kenosha, anybody can come out. But yeah, to have a national organization to align my personal mission of my unspoken conversation with Candace podcast, it's amazing. So I really believe the stars align when you're on your purpose. And this is truly my purpose. By day, I'm a healthcare IT professional, but by night, I do my author work and my podcasting, and I do motivational speaking, and I'm also a life coach. So I like to say I'm the Jill of all trades instead of the Jack of all trades.
So you come home from work, you put your laptop away, and you put on your cape and you turn into a superhero.
There you go. That's what I do.
That's what you do, right?
That's what I do. I just have one laptop for work and one laptop for personal. And yeah, I'm bouncing between the two sometimes. Absolutely.
So if I have a question about my Windows update, you can help me as well.
Sure, why not? I'll find someone for you.
I love
That's the beauty of our networks, right?
See, you came to the podcast and now you have a ride from Candace. She can help you with your computer. She's a superhero. She does it all. It's amazing.
I try. Yes,
amazing.
Thank you. Thank you.
And I love connecting with people, because as we grow our circle, as we bring people into our lives who can help us and help us grow, we get that feedback as well, right? And so I'm curious, as a listener to your podcast, can you tell me of a time when somebody has reached out as a listener and responded to an episode or to you personally, and you've helped them, and what that meant to you when that happened?
Yes. You never know who you're going to touch. And I'll be very transparent. There's moments where sometimes I feel like, is the work that I'm doing, is it making a difference? Does it matter? And then all of a sudden, somebody pops up in my inbox. Somebody sends me a message via my website. Somebody texts me, a friend, and they'll listen to my podcast. And I can tell you that there was one episode where I had a cancer survivor on my podcast, a very dear friend of mine who we worked together in healthcare. Her name was Luce. And, she's still fighting this terminal illness. But cancer is also another unspoken taboo topic. People don't know what to say to cancer. People who are going through cancer, they don't know, how to speak to them. They're like, I'm still living. I'm still here. Why are you acting as if I'm gone already? So, again, it was navigating that space. But one thing I'd like to say about my guests is that I feel like they all have this like connection of, by the grace of God, or, their spirituality, or they're rooted in some sort of foundation that they believe in, right? The values, the morals. And again, I'm not here to practice religion, any of that. It's just basically that connection to something bigger than ourselves.
Yep.
And to me, that human element, that realness. And so when I had her on my episode, somebody that was fighting cancer, their family was going through stuff, listened to that episode, and it just gave them hope. Right? It just gave them hope. And that's what my story, I think, has done too, is it's giving people who have gone through tough times hope, not to give up, to keep going through this journey of life, to shine a light on a darkness, and to say that, just to tell people that they're not alone, that they matter, their voice matters, and we're stronger together. When you stand together with other survivors or other people who have experienced hardship, just the whole fact of releasing that and letting someone know what you're feeling. Oh my God, there is so much power in that. And that human, like you said, element, the connection. And that's really what I am so grateful that when I do get those reach outs, it means that, Candace, you're doing what you're supposed to be doing. Do not quit and keep going. And that's just what I keep doing. And so I trying to do it all. I do it and I fit it in because I know it's important work. And I have to say that season 3, I just finished season 2. I'm launching season 3 in 2023, and I am dedicating season 3 to all male survivors, because even the men, there was a call of action. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month, and I attended a meeting where there was a male panel, and the males were kind of calling out that when you go to resource centers, a lot of those resource centers are geared towards women. And it is true. It is true, because there's a stigma about men, that men can't be abused, men can't be bullied, men can't be beaten, men can't feel a certain way because of the stigma of men are strong and men are this, but it happens to boys too. And so I am dedicating season 3 to all male survivors. And
Wow.
That is my answer to the call of action, because the work that I feel that this is again, bigger than myself. And so I'm trying to, have a legacy for myself, because I'm not here. I won't be here forever. We all have to go sometime. And that's another thing. People don't like to talk about death, but I'm a big planner. So I think it's something you have to have a conversation, because life happens and so does death, and it's a circle of life. So
wow. So for
wanted to share that.
season 3, for sure. I have another podcast called Dad Space, and it's a podcast for dads by dads. And we're focusing on men, because
Nice.
there's a gap I find in some of the podcasting space. So I would love to promote that season for sure on Dad Space.
Excellent.
And anytime we can work together, I would love to support you in that, because I think you're leading the way, and thank you for doing that. I think that's
Absolutely
really needed.
Thank you, David. I appreciate that. Yeah, I was kind of curious when I started this season 3 endeavor, and believe me, as a woman survivor, I am very respectful to the fact of, I don't think as a woman survivor I can speak to the male survivor. So I will be having 2 male co-hosting the show with me, because I feel it's important for the male representation, the male voice to be recognized. And so I will be having some good friends that have now become my best friends for season 3. And the cool thing is we're going to do video. We're going to do the video and the audio version for podcasting. So I will be launching my YouTube channel so that the males have a safe place, so that they can promote it to other men that are going through it. So instead of having to go to a resource center, you just got to go to my YouTube channel, and there's all the episodes. Listen to other male survivors. And these male survivors, oh my God, they have books on Amazon. I've been reading their books. I have all their interviews coming up, their one-on-one interviews. And so I'm so already inspired by all of them. And I'm learning more about things that I went through, because it's so relatable to what they went through. So again, just the power and the fact that we're not alone. You matter, your story matters, and we're stronger when we're together.
So yeah, let's circle back together when you're ready to launch, and let's have you back on and just talk about this season coming up.
Okay,
Amazing.
that's awesome.
Amazing.
I'd love to. Thank you. Thank you.
So let's switch gears. Let's talk about the book, because we have the podcast. Great resource. It's available now. It's evergreen. You can listen anytime. We'll have all the links, obviously, in the show notes. Talk about the book and maybe the why behind the book. And we've already kind of touched on it a little bit, but who the audience is and why this book matters.
Yes. So the book, again, is titled Unspoken, by Candace Sanchez, available on Amazon. You can buy it on my website, www.candacesanchez.com. But really, it's for anyone that, has either been through child abuse, sexual child abuse, with a parent or someone that's violated them, somebody they trusted. I feel like the book does have, it ends on a positive note. It talks about resiliency. I never lose hope. It's trauma. There are triggers. I know that, some survivors have said, Candace, it was hard to get through your book because it was so much like my story. But really, there's also nuggets of information for parents to be more aware, for educators to understand that when they see a child being rebellious or lashing out or why not pull that child aside and find out if there's something going on at home? Give them the ability to feel safe, to feel heard. And so I talk a little bit about my journey where there was missed opportunities, right? I dropped a suicide note, somebody found it, and then they called home. Instead of talking to me, they called home. My abuser comes to quote unquote my rescue, and he's the one that's violating me. So again, when you see a child struggling, or it's okay to ask them, like, are you okay? Do you feel safe? Is there something going on at home? Is someone hurting you that you trust or that you love and respect? Just like what's the norm when you go to a doctor's office? The doctors ask you, about domestic violence. They ask you about sexual trafficking, so why is child abuse not discussed, not talked about? And sometimes it is the parents that are doing this, and it's unfortunate. And in my case, there was a lot of missed opportunities, even with my own mom, who I love, respect. I don't have any ill will towards my mother, but it's just the fact that she had, I think, the mother gut instinct told her something was going on. And she had me read an article, and she asked me very indirectly. So I believe in direct upfront. If someone touching you, if someone doing something to you that they shouldn't be, and educating your kids on their private parts, educating them, it should be something to talk about, So again, I think my message is really, the book is for everybody. And, age appropriate, to have a conversation, read it as a family, talk about these things that can happen. And never leave your kids in a room with someone. Like, you should not be leaving your kids alone with adults in a room, like watching TV. I talk about that in my book. So again, I think my book speaks to everybody. I do know that someone that I work with, she read my book and she said, Candace, I read your book and I immediately sat my kids down, who are 5 and 3, and I had a conversation with them. And they needed to know that these body parts that they have are precious and they're theirs, and nobody, not even your dad, not even your uncles, not even, and if you're not comfortable sitting on people's laps and you don't want to give kisses, you don't have to, because that's the other thing in our culture, especially in Hispanic culture. And I am Hispanic. You're supposed to be doing that as a term of affection. I wasn't always comfortable with that, because I always felt something had to be given in return, not just a kiss, but it has to go further. So for me, I was always uncomfortable with that, but I was taught that it's a term of respect. So a lot of good information of things to think about as a parent, as an educator, guidance counselor, moms, dads, family members. It's so relatable. So please go purchase the book Unspoken. Love to get your support. And then, I have to ask, as a new author, it's very important to get an Amazon review, whether you love it or you hate it. I love your feedback, because every feedback is important to me. And writing a review on what inspired you, or what made you speak out about your story, or if you felt something, I love to hear about it.
So the one thing I caught as you were talking to Candace was you mentioned something along the lines of not staying in your trauma. There's a happier ending to this book. For those that are listening and watching, and they feel like they're trapped in their trauma, they can't get out. What is a step? What is a way to move into some freedom in life and not be so trapped all the time? What do we do?
Yeah. So for me, one thing I highly recommend is therapy, searching out mental health, getting your therapy, getting help that you need, professional help. Thank God I had a therapist. I'll do a shout out to my therapist, Marianne Johnson. She was my therapist for about 10 years. And without her, I don't know where I'd be, number one. So I got the help, professional help that I needed. Number two is quit blaming yourself. Quit blaming yourself and making yourself feel like you deserved it or you're not worthy. Because I'm going to tell you right now, that is so false. If there's ever been a false statement, that's the false statement right there. And you're not alone. There's so many survivors. Like I said, 1 in 4 and 1 in 6. So people in your circle, if you just open your mouth and you talk about it, you'd be so surprised at who's in your circle that has experienced exactly what you've experienced. And then I think it's just trusting. It's hard to trust people. And I struggled with trust, but thank God, I started speaking out. I started to share my story little by little, and not everybody will show you compassion, but the fact that if you can share it with one person, you do not have to take it to the grave with you, because there are some people, the average age, this is another fact, the average age of somebody coming out after being abused as a child or going through sexual assault or 52 years old is the average age, because they usually don't want to tell until that person that either abused them is gone, has left this life, and because they don't want to hurt anybody else. And I never wanted to hurt my mom, but I needed to tell my story. I needed to put that aside because the story wasn't about her, it was about me and what I went through. And I know that, like I said, I'm not alone, and others will be able to shine a light on their darkness if they're willing to come forward, get the professional help they need, get out of that, I don't want to say pity party, but you can go from victim to survivor to thriver. And I want you to thrive in life. I am finally 51 years old, and I can say that I'm finally, I know what I want to be when I grow up. And that's not only an advocate for myself, but for others. And it took me all this time to do the work, and I'm still doing the work. Do I still struggle now? Yes, I still struggle. Do I still have my moments? Yes, I still have my moments, but it's not going to stop me from living the best life that I can possibly live. And if today I have a bad day, tomorrow is a new day. Start over, press the reset button, and charge forward. And I have to say that I was abused by my stepfather and my uncle. I carry my stepfather's last name. You could read about it in the book, how, he kind of adopted me. In my mind, illegally, I feel. But after my book ends on a full circle of blessings. I found my biological father after all these years, and I thought I was an only child. And now there's 14 of us in my dad's family. So I have a huge family down in San Antonio, Texas, my Lopez family. My name should have been Candace Lopez. I could have been like, instead of Jennifer Lopez, I could be Candace Lopez.
Come on. Canlo, I guess I'd be Canlo.
Canlo, CeeLo.
Wow.
But anywho, I'm so, like I said, there is always a light at the end of that dark tunnel. It's just, there's other survivors. Get the help that you need. You're not alone. You matter. And I have to say, I dabbled in drugs. I dabbled with partying. I was very promiscuous. I felt unworthy. I did all that garbage, and then when I had kids, I realized all that garbage I was doing, how can I be a role model to them if I'm not a better person, if I don't become a better version of myself? And so my kids inspired me to be the best person that I could possibly be. And I'm still trying to be the best mom, the best grandma, the best friend, the best colleague, the best professional person you can meet. Again, it's just a constant learning, lifelong healing journey. You never forget. I have forgiven. Not everybody will forgive, and that's okay. It's on your timetable. But all I got to say is, once you do kind of let it go and release, you can go from victim to survivor to being a true thriver.
Candace Sanchez is here on the podcast, everybody. From IT support, superhero, Uber driver, event promoter, and creator. She's got everything covered. She could have been the next J-Lo, but she didn't have time in her calendar, right? You could have done that. There's no stopping you.
I would have done it. Would have, should have. Yeah,
I'll let her have
love
that.
J-Lo.
She can be Jenny from the block, right?
She can be Jenny from the block. Yeah.
Thank you so much for taking time for us from your car. This is my first podcast episode from a car. I'm so excited to have this. Candace, we definitely are going to reconnect. I love David, being part of your community, part of your world. I love your message. I love your attitude, how you're giving yourself and putting yourself out there in a way where people can feel safe to speak to you about stuff they've never talked about before. You're creating that community. Please continue.
Yes.
Please don't stop. And for anyone that's out there who are like, I need to talk to Candace, we're going to have all the links and everything. Reach out. Candace will speak to you. Candace will make time for you. And if there's an opportunity to get you on the podcast, however that is, men, listen up. Season 3 coming up. Some special stuff coming just for you. And Candace, thank you for creating something outside of yourself that brings people into your world. It's amazing. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, David, so much for having me. God bless. Take care.
Hey guys, thank you for listening to the podcast. Jump over to livingthenextchapter.com, our website, and you will see a spot where you can leave a voice message. We'd love to hear your feedback. We're trying to make it as easy as possible to hear from you. So if you want your voice on this podcast, yes, that's possible. Go to livingthenextchapter.com, click the little microphone icon, leave a voice message. We'll insert your message into the podcast. Tell us where you're listening from. Tell us your favorite guest. Maybe there's a guest we should have on the podcast. Maybe you should be our next guest. Leave us a message at livingthenextchapter.com. Again, thank you so much for listening. Please share this podcast episode with one person. That's all we're asking. Meet you over there at livingthenextchapter.com. Thank you for listening. Thank you for sharing. Love to hear from you. Till the next episode. It's coming up right away. Be sure you hit that subscribe button. Thank you for being part of Living the Next Chapter. Thank you for supporting our guests. Have a great day.
Mindshift Power Podcast, the podcast for teenagers and those who work with them. There's a huge problem in America today. There's a very large disconnect between teenagers and the adults who work with them. I'm looking to bridge that gap with real, raw, honest conversation, not held back by the chains of political correctness. You cannot solve a problem you do not understand. Want to understand teenagers today? Listen to this podcast. This podcast is for teens in the U.S. and Canada. To learn more, go to fatimabay.com/podcast or just look for Mindshift Power Podcast on any listening platform. I look forward to you being a faithful listener.